Hey there. We were gonna start this a half second sooner, but I didn't hit the button, so I just resulted in just saying hell. But hello.
Hell. Poop.
Poop.
Who's gonna fire us?
No one can. You can't fire me.
You can stop watching.
Oh,
You can't fire us.
Womp. Anyways, hello and welcome to thoughtraid. Today we're going to be talking about how Dungeons and Dragons has changed my life, and maybe also if you've dabbled in that too. I'd like to know about your experiences.
Dabbled in the dark arts.
The dark arts of Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to get right into that, so here we go. Welcome back to thoughtraid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and this is Tim. And today we're talking about how Dungeons and Dragons has changed my life, because this one's going to be a fun story, and a very interesting one at that too, because I think there's a lot of Christians that have varying amounts of opinion on the matter of Dungeons and Dragons. Is it good? Is it evil? Well, I think a lot of Christians, at least up until now, have thought it to be some kind of evil dark arts thing that will slip your soul to Satan. And I'm here today to say they're wrong. And I want to just kind of go into like some fun stories regarding my experiences playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Did you always play it as a kid?
No. I mean, I grew up in the family that declared that Pokemon was pocket demons.
Pocket demons.
Pocket demons, or pocket monsters specifically.
Pokedeems.
Pokedeems. So I wouldn't even dream. At that time, I would not even dreamt about playing Dungeons and Dragons, let alone even Pokemon and the cards of which that I hid in my closet.
What about Harry Potter? Did you get to watch that?
No. Burn in hell. No.
Rugrats?
I mean, that no one cared about that.
What about like Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead?
I never had. That? I didn't really have much interest in that, so it wouldn't have mattered.
Beavis and Butthead so much.
Yes, I got into things like SpongeBob and maybe a little bit of Ed, and Eddie. When it comes to anything close to Beavis and Butthead.
That show made me feel bad. I don't know why. I just got so depressed every time I saw it on the screen.
Very interesting. But no, I my parents were pretty loose about most things, but when it came to anything potentially linked to witchcraft, they were like, no. And so it never occurred. I never thought to look into Dungeons and Dragons really until later on in my life. So there's that. But so Dungeons and Dragons, what is it? So if any of you don't know what it is, it's a role-playing game, which means nerds who basically like some degree of math get together around a table with dice, and they think about a world, and one person is like telling a story and everyone else is playing in that story as a particular character, and to see if they succeed or fail in any actions they take, they roll dice and do math. And that settles it. And there's some kind of goal that everyone's trying to head towards. I mean, that's like the most basic, watered down definition of what Dungeons and Dragons is.
Well, it's like Lord of the Rings, but you get to play one of the characters in real life.
In real life, yes. You get to. Kinda. Like, because like in Dungeons and Dragons, you have elves, you have dwarves, you have goblins, you have orcs, all that kind of stuff, just like in Lord of the Rings. But it's all about like, you're trying to defeat some sort of evil most of the time, unless you agree to doing a campaign where you are the evil and you're trying to conquer the world. It depends on what you want to do. It varies. It very much so varies how your experience goes and who is leading the whole story and what your individual goals are.
Do you feel like it was represented well in Stranger Things? If you guys have seen Stranger Things, it's based around the concept of D&D.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they have those moments where they were in the basement and they were playing Dungeons and Dragons, literally. I guess, there's some degree. Everyone has their different ways of going about it. You have some people that have, like, the table, and there's a map, and then, like, they have little minifigures they put on the map. And then you have, the most common theme is the dice. You have all different types of dice. Like, I have, like, 6 or 7 dice that I can roll, from D20 to D100. So, I don't know. It's been years since the last time I've watched Stranger Things. There's a little bit of representation of it.
Don't forget to hit the button, by the way.
What button? Oh, thank you.
For the stuff. Man.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I forgot.
We got to see your thing.
We have to see our sponsors and the logo that's over here.
Yeah. So, the title of the stream today is How D&D Changed Brandon's Life. And for a lot of people, myself included, I always wanted to play D&D growing up, but A, I didn't have friends. B, it took money to do so. And C, things when I was growing up, because I'm 36, when I was a young adolescent and preteen, whatever, when I actually wanted to do this more hardcore, it wasn't as easily accessible. Internet wasn't a thing.
Oh, right.
And plus there was this weird stigma around it too. Like in my room, I remember having like dragon posters and all that stuff because I wasn't raised as a Christian, and honestly, it's a topic that's up for debate whether dragons and stuff are actually demonic. But I remember wanting to do that too, and how cool it would be. But so I never actually got to participate. I played the video games like Tales of the Sword Coast and Baldur's Gate and all that stuff. But how did you? So exactly, what was it? What was it like for you as a kid, and how did the transition from your childhood into young adulthood? How did that whole thing change your life? Tell me the story.
Well,
Brandon.
First of all, I didn't really get introduced to it, like actual play it, until I was an adult. Mm-hmm. So I began all the way closer to where we're at now. I didn't really hear much about it, if anything at all, when I was a kid. Instead, when I was a kid, I played computer games and Nintendo games, and that was primarily what I did. And I would always, have a very active imagination, so I would take some things I played in the game and then imagine it was happening when I was on the playground as a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember when Pikmin came out. I was super excited about that. I went onto the playground at school during recess, and I would pretend the field was full of Pikmin, and I'd be plucking them out and trying to do things with them. Like, that's something I did as a kid growing up. I loved Pikmin. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get introduced into Dungeons & Dragons and actually play it until, I want to say, 2015.
So 6 years ago?
2015, maybe 2014, something around that time, because we were still on Skype, and it was Mike that introduced me to it.
From UGN?
From UGN, which context, I started an online gaming community in 2013 called Unity Gaming Servers at the time. Now it's called United Gamers Nations. And he came to be part in 2014. So it was somewhere between 2014 to 16 in that range when I first played it. And it was Mike that got me into it, honestly, because he would tell me about his experiences with him and his brother playing together. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. And as I was starting to unlearn those spiritual Christian fears of it taking your soul away or something, I was like, you know what? Who cares? I was an adult who was going to judge me for it.
Did you never question that in your earlier young adult life, like through your early 20s?
Like, if my parents said this was wrong, did I ever question it?
Yeah, like looking at Pokemon, for instance. Did it ever once cross your mind, hey, Pokemon might not be from the devil?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I was a rule-following kid, honest and truly. Mm-hmm. So it didn't bother me too much. It bothered me a little bit, but I didn't like, oh, darn it, I can't do this. Like, I wanted to play Pokemon a little bit more than I was allowed. But there was other things, like anything involving witchcraft or whatever, I wouldn't touch it. I just, no. Mm-hmm. Just clearly that's satanic. It's evil. No.
Did you ever play with a Ouija board?
No, I wouldn't even begin to believe. But
no. Those things have always freaked me out. Any of that stuff. Like, did you ever watch The Craft growing up?
Nope.
With the three witches?
No, I didn't even watch Harry Potter, so much less would I watch something like that.
I love Harry Potter so much.
But I didn't care about Harry Potter. I legitimately didn't care about that. Pokemon maybe, but not Harry Potter. So it wasn't until I was an adult that I was introduced to it. And very quickly, I was the one to DM it. I was the one
Dungeon mastering.
Dungeon mastering, yes. Or they might call it the GM. I think maybe
The game master.
Game master. Yes, GM, DM. I very quickly started to do that. My first campaign that I hosted was based off of an old map that I made off of something called Incarnate. Incarnate is a map-making software that's on the web, and free. It was free to use at the time. Now it's like $5 a month, which is super cheap.
So you made the map, and then you started hosting.
I did, and it was based around a virus, the magical virus.
This sounds familiar, Brandon.
This was before the pandemic, okay? And the magical virus swept over the land, and you had to do a fortitude save every day. If you failed, you would contract the virus.
Now, what he means by that, in D&D, you have all these characters, think of it like chess, but you have all these dice, and your characters have different statistics, whether it's charisma, strength, vitality, whatever, luck.
Yes, you have strength, how strong you are, your intelligence, how smart you are, constitution, how much you can handle before getting sick. There's wisdom. There's charisma for how
all sorts of statistics.
Yes,
and everything is based on that. So as a DM, as a GM, whatever you want to call it, you could force your, like Brandon was saying, okay, it's morning, you guys need to roll your dice. So you'd roll your dice, and if you landed on a number that's high enough and you succeeded
with bonuses
and whatnot,
because every character has different bonuses or vices that would make them better to survive or worse to survive.
Yeah, so for instance, one of the player characters could say, oh, I want to run down this hall, and the GM could throw them a curveball and say, wait, you need to roll your dice for dexterity. And it's like, well, what do you mean? You roll the dice, and if you roll like a 1, which is considered a crit fail, it's like, oh no, you just tripped and broke your leg because you weren't dexterous enough.
Yes, or more specifically, the walls open up and flames start coming out.
Yeah, and so these dice create an element of variancy between the storyteller and the people playing the game. That way, nobody can heavy fist everything. That's not what I mean. Heavy fist. That's something completely different.
They can't just walk through it as if nothing's happening.
Yeah, roll initiative.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Bryce.
So we did that, and if they contract the disease essentially progressed from irritations of the skin, then it turns into leprosy, and then the leprosy eventually affects the brain, and then you die, and then you reanimate, and you become some kind of zombie type of thing, which was absolutely horrible. And the skin cells that would fall off a person would turn into dust, which would then form into these grotesque monsters that haunted the people. And it was all because of this child god that was having nightmares. And the nightmares were manifesting into reality, and they had to sing a song or something at the very end to put the child back to sleep.
Couldn't they just kill him?
Well, fun thing about when you do anything with DMing a game, your players will always find ridiculous ways of solving the problem. Mike had the brilliant idea to create a bullet that had an enchantment that when it struck a person, it would send them under the ground. And the only way you can pull them back up is to specifically think about them and every detail about them possible, and then they would be released from their bonds. So he came, he saw that child, he fired, and there was supposed to be this whole process to put the child to rest. The child went into the ground, and the spell was broken. It was just like so anticlimactic for everything.
Poking holes in your reasoning.
Exactly.
Brandon.
All this time I had spent trying to like build this big threat and everything, and a bullet put the child down into the ground.
You know, that's so crazy because that's like a picture of freaking God. Because he had this whole plan of how he wanted our relationship to be, and humans were like, no, let me do this thing that Anyways,
Let me go my own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first experience.
Right.
So the first DMA experience, at the very least.
You did your DMA experience, and then what was that like for you? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Were you like,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a whole lot. I began during my free time at work. I began writing up plans of how the campaign would go and what would happen, and what if they went this direction, this would happen. Went that direction,
and
that would
the
happen.
campaign is the story.
The story
That's
itself,
what that means.
which can span over one session or multiple months or whatever. It just greatly depends. But we did that. Wait, hold on. Oh, Mike is here. I will fix it. Ace the gunslinger with the imprisonment bullet. Yes, you called it the no daddy no bullet.
Oh man,
yes, that was a good time. And we were going to go into your plane of existence at the end of that first part of the campaign. We were going to go into your plane, and then something happened and it fell apart. But that was a lot of fun. So that stuck. That was my beginning into the D&D universe, even though it was technically Pathfinder, which is a sister version of D&D. It was still practically D&D.
Also, brief insert for tomorrow. We're thinking about having a game night, and we're thinking about Pathfinder. I'm trying to sway Brandon into purchasing Pathfinder because the Steam sale is like $5. So if we get 5 likes or get a couple thumbs up in chat, we'll play Pathfinder tomorrow.
So anyways, that got me started. But the problem at the time is that there's a lot of rules. Like I said, there's a lot of math that goes involved with Pathfinder or D&D, because you roll and then you have your stats, and your stats augment your roll, and then that goes up against someone else's stats to see if you succeed in attacking them. So that overwhelmed the crap out of me.
What, just all the different variables?
Yeah, like you roll a d20, then you add this modifier, and then if you're wearing armor, you add that modifier, and then if you have this condition, you subtract that. It's just so many things I had to juggle in my head. I was like, screw all of this. I don't want to deal with it. And we ended up one day, we finally got into Discord. This is early on when Discord had just started. And Axeman and we were playing together in this one channel. He was pretending that I think maybe he was a god. I was pretending that I was a god. We were both doing one thing and saying it didn't happen. Like, I would do something, he would say it didn't happen. And it was super frustrating. But in my frustration, I decided to keep along with it. And after about going through this for like 15 minutes, I actually found that I enjoyed what I was doing. I was like, And so I just had my experience playing Dungeons & Dragons and doing that online. And I was like, what if we took that, simplified it, and turned it into a text-based thing? And what you didn't know is that long before I got to that place, so that was like, let's just say that was 2017. I want to say 8 years before that point, maybe 9, I had begun writing a book. It was Dry Moor Discovering Earth is what I called it, and it was based off of what if at the very end of the Milky Way galaxy, hidden behind a light-bending nebula, there is an advanced civilization of humans that are 1,000 years technologically ahead of Earth, and they discovered quantum physics and how to manipulate it, and they discovered how to go from one place to another place. And I built that for 2 years when I was bored in high school, and then I stopped because I felt like it was too close to something else I had done. And for years, that book's 200 pages worth of writing sat unfinished. And after having that experience in 2017 with Axeman just being stupid, I decided, let's just start some roleplay again. So I ended up starting a text-based roleplay utilizing a much simpler version of Dungeons & Dragons where you just primarily roll a d20, which is, again, dice with 20 sides. And we started that. And we began with the realm of the gods. So we continued forward where I was a god, Axe was a god, whoever else, Josh, Nate, other people, a bunch of us were gods.
Mind you guys, he's positioning this from a place of, this is okay to be a Christian and do this.
Yes! This is definitely coming from that place.
I'm just going to create myself as a god.
But
it's okay.
But see, here's the thing. In this world, we were all gods, but there was an over-god who was the creator. And the creator was essentially our god. Like, the Judeo-Christian god. Pattern is as much as I could possibly off of him. So he created essentially what we would consider to be angels, but in the story they're all sub-gods. And we are all gods of different things. And so we began this thing, we had this beautiful introduction of how the creator breathed life into this universe, and matter and everything came into existence, and everything flowed together, and boom, these gods formed, and they started shaping the matter into what they wanted it to be.
Right, so just for time's sake, so you're creating all this.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So you're creating all this, and you learn from your first campaign. You're like, I want to do this. This sounds great. What's like the punchline? Like, how did it change your life? What was it exactly?
I'm sorry, all this placed together. But I needed to stop going on the stories and start on the whole thing. Okay, sorry. We started this whole thing, and what ended up happening is I brought people along, and we as we played the gods, and then we shifted to playing mortals instead. All the gods, all the mortals took on aspects of ourselves, which is the main thing. The point of how this all changed my life. They all began to take on aspects of who we are. Some of them more obvious, some of them less obvious. I remember, like, Axeman had specific parts of himself in his god characters and his the angelic beings he made cupids, and then eventually the mortals. And I could tell as we were playing when he was having a rough time or not, by how his characters were reacting to the situations they were thrown into. And I began to see that in him.
Give me an example. What do you mean? Like, he would do something that was inconsistent with his character?
Well, like, I remember there was this specific time in the early on where he had Bacchus, who had a bar.
Bacchus is that god of, like, debauchery and
wine and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, come on, Axeman.
He had Bacchus, and his god Anteros was heavily drinking, like more than safe consumable amounts. And he was just kind of isolating from the other gods, which was significant because Anteros was the god of love, and he was isolating from everyone else. And I could tell that something was wrong, and I would utilize that as a way to begin to minister to Axeman during that time. And it was just very interesting to see this part of himself. And if you were to see who Anteros was when we began in 2017 to who he is now, and also who Axeman's other characters are, you would see that there was growth in Axeman.
That's interesting. You know, just thinking about the different types of personas and stuff we take in online gaming and whatnot. For instance, our screen names or handles or whatever you go by. And like Axeman, you don't just go out on the street and say, "What's up, Axeman?" That's not a normal name, you know. Like, no. my online handle is Stun and Run, and I chose that because of different experiences I've had, and it's actually a comical reason. But then before that, I had all these weird, like, I thought so hard, just like in video games, we think so hard about naming our characters, how we're going to be represented, and there's all these like weird situations online where some people are known as, like, I don't know, Fiend Masher 66, and then they go by Fiend Masher, and like 10 years down the road after they've built relationships with people, it's like you see somebody on Discord or on social media, "Oh, what's up, Fiend Masher?" It's like, what? You know, and just thinking about how we create these alternate personas where it feels like we're safe to live as we feel instead of real life. I don't know. Yeah. I just think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But if I were to see Axeman in person today, I would still probably partially refer to him as Axeman. Like, because that's how I've known him, and I kind of flex between calling him Axeman or by his real name in person. And I've done that several times.
I think it's kind of, I don't know if this is how I mean it, but I'm just going to say it this way, kind of cringy. Like, if I ever saw Bryce in real life and I was like, "What's up, Eden?" or whatever the name was before, or like Invader 6, it's like, what's up, Invader 6? Like, just thinking about real life Tim and then the online version of Tim. The online version of Tim, oh, I mean, this is how we operate, you know. But in real life, it's like, hey, Brandon. Or what if it's like, hey, Mobster B353, how are you?
Hey, Mob.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyways, you were talking about how you started seeing character differences in people's
individual
role play.
people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the topic is how it changed your life. Talk to me about how that specifically changed your life.
Well, as I began to see different aspects of individual players' lives in their characters, I began to notice that in my own life and how I played my characters specifically. And particularly also with my main character, whose name is Saren. Saren is, I call him an Alatash. He's a human angelic type being. He's not an angel, but he has wings. And he personifies the part of me that desperately wants to be cool. And...
Oh, Brandon, you're cool in my eyes. Man.
Oh, Tim!
Actually, I'll probably just give you an 8.
Wow. Saren personifies the part of me that wishes that I wasn't so emotionally all over the... Well, not emotionally all over the place, but that I was just more in control, cool, you know, funny, witty, whatever. Like, I put that all into Saren.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just... Whenever Saren goes through things, it's a moment for me to, like, reflect and think about, like, where is this coming from me?
Yeah,
because it does. There's moments where, you know, Saren is bothered by something, and then I realized later on that I was bothered by that. I'm like, why did that bother me?
Interesting.
And it's just, I learn about myself through my characters, because when I'm playing my characters, I'm not thinking about how would Brandon react to this. I'm not really even thinking at all. I'm just flowing as the character would be. I mentally shift into that character so that way, because like when people say, well, why didn't Saren do this or that? I'm like, I can't force Saren to do anything.
Do you feel like having a character personification of how you feel or like yourself in this alternate world, do you feel like that's a safe way to live out the things that you're afraid to live out in real life?
Yes. I think, well, like especially also, like another thing I've been psychoanalyzing myself over is why do every time I play Dungeons and Dragons, I like to play someone that's evil. I enjoy playing evil, sadistic characters. But it is a safe way to explore that part, because everyone has evil. The Bible says our hearts are wicked above all else. Who can understand it? Like, a man's heart is wicked. Mm-hmm. Like, so all of us have evil tendencies within ourselves, selfish ambition to say the least. Mm-hmm. And roleplay and Dungeons and Dragons has helped me recognize my capacity for evil and to address it.
Did you ever play Fable?
No, I have not played Fable.
So, and if you guys have ever played this game, Fable is one of those games where based on it's got that radiant story mechanic, kind of like Skyrim does, and every time you make a decision, your character would change. So, for instance, if I did all my missions without armor, my character would get all scarred up.
Interesting.
And based on the decisions you would make, your character eventually would get a halo or would get like a dark cloud and like be evil and stuff. But even in that game, I felt so convicted. Like there was this one quest one time where this little girl's like, she gives you some baby chicks and she wants you to deliver them to somebody. And so you take it to the delivery NPC. And they're like, oh, you brought me those chicks. And one of there's two options. Either deliver them and say, here you go, or eat the chicks in front of them. Right? And like my brother was always the one where he just did all the evil stuff, right? But I'm like, I can't, man, I know this is just a video game, but I can't do that. I couldn't bring myself to do the evil stuff in the games, you know? And I don't know, I just think it's kind of interesting because I want to do, nah, do I really? I'm curious as to what happens if I do that stuff. But even in games, like I want to represent myself in a specific way.
Before I started playing Dungeons & Dragons, my first role-playing... I played a lot of role-play games before Dungeons & Dragons. I played City of Heroes, I played Star Wars The Republic or Knights of the Republic, and I had those opportunities. Never took the opportunity to be evil, ever. Like, I always played good characters, and if I played evil characters, I'd play them and move them towards redemption.
Yeah. That's just so much work, man. I just want to be the hero. I want to be the guy everybody looks up to, and...
But when I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I began to allow, because as being the DM, I had to play villains.
Mm-hmm.
Because who are you going to defeat otherwise? There's nothing to defeat if there are no villains in the first place.
Yeah.
So I played the villains, and since that point, it's helped me recognize aspects of myself that I would not normally see.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just changed my life. Like, it helped me see things about who I am, and also to help me see, I think while playing Dungeons and Dragons, it helped me also see that God, it's not so much about what we do, and more so about our heart that's important to God. Because there are a lot of things that you might not want to do because your heart's in the wrong place, but they're not necessarily bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, for instance, there may be some games I can't play because they have sexual content and my heart is not yet in the right place for them. But another person could see the very exact same things and could care less about it.
We were talking about this earlier because you know how you've played The Sims before, but I remember working at GameStop. There are all these kids that would come in asking for herbs, Sims in the City. You remember herbs, URBZ?
Oh, yes.
It was like the more PG rated version of The Sims.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I asked Ariane why she, like, her family was just more restricted and stuff. Like, her parents, much like yours, Christian household. But my parents were like, I mean, just play whatever you want. You just don't make stupid decisions, And it wasn't a Christian household. And The Sims has stuff like, I think it's called making whoopee, where you have sex. But everything's making woohoo. It's how you have a baby
Whoopee.
and stuff.
Woohoo.
And everything's like blurred out and whatnot, but the context is there. But herbs doesn't have that, I don't think. I don't know why I went off on this tangent.
Because we were talking specifically, it's not about, I was talking about...
Oh, it's the heart.
The heart.
Yeah, the heart.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the heart in D&D, and I'm getting off topic.
But yeah, it's about the heart. And I learned that too, because here's a thing that I think Christians get stuck up on when it comes to D&D. They see the dragons, the demons, they see the 9 layers of hell, they see all the stuff that exists within Dungeons. That's there.
Mm-hmm.
There are things. You have Asmodeus in D&D. He exists. And there are demons and devils.
And succubi.
And all that stuff. But, like, there's a big difference between the game is centered about worshiping those things and the game is centered about defeating those things.
Well, that's like Diablo for me. Like, I'm a Diablo fiend. I love Diablo 2. Diablo 3 was okay. Diablo 2 Resurrected is... I can't wait. September 23rd cannot come fast enough. But in that game, you play as a Nephilim, which is the product of a mortal woman and an angel. You have godly powers taking out Diablo, And it's like, at face value, you see all these demons and there's succubi in there too, and I think there's like partial nudity and part of it or whatever, but it's like the whole heart of the game is you're slaying demons.
Right.
And even if it wasn't, like, there was this game that came out, I forget what it was called. It was on the Xbox 360. I think it was called Shadows of the Damned, where you were a demon slaying angels and trying to kill God. And I felt like that game I felt kind of convicted about.
Interesting.
Just like the whole the heart behind it. It's like, yeah, it's a simulation of how man wants to be evil, I guess. And I'm like, who would want to play that? But there are people that. But
that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not as black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Because that game, what's the story behind it? What's the message behind it? Because if it is just straight, my job and goal is to worship the devil, that's one thing. There are some games that the whole express purpose of it is just lust or just causing pain and misery. Like, I know of games that is completely focused around sadistic desires and beating up and hurting people. And I know there are games that exist simply just to get sexual pleasure out of. I know they exist. But then there are other games that they may be centered around doing evil things, but the purpose is to get people to see things from a different perspective and realize and pause, wait a minute, I'm the person doing these things, and it could save a person. But if you just completely throw it out because it has those dark themes and it seems it's centered around that, And that's the thing about Dungeons and Dragons. It's such a versatile tool to expose parts of ourselves so that we can address them in a way that we're not even thinking about it. You're not thinking about what's going on in my life when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're thinking about how is my orc going to respond to 5,000 skeletons coming at me with knives and arrows and everything. You know, how am I going to get myself out of this situation? What roles do I need to make? You're not thinking about those things. So then these parts of yourself squeak forward, and then they can be addressed. I can't tell you the amount of people I can't tell you the amount of people because it's not like there's been a lot. I can't tell you the amount of times that the role play that we've done has helped people realize parts of themselves.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting too, because if you have never played D&D, you also have different alignments. So for instance, you have
neutral, lawful,
chaotic,
good, evil, and neutral.
Yeah, and like what would you classify yourself as in real life?
Lawful good.
I think lawful good. Would I be lawful good too, Brandon? I feel like I'm more on the chaotic side than you. I feel like I would be like chaotic good, maybe.
Yes, we should. I agree with that one. I have been thinking about it. I've just been trying to figure out, do I have the energy for it? Because, you know, it's a lot.
Well, so there is... I got to look it up. There's this game that's been done by I think it was Tales of the Sword Coast, where you buy a license. It's $150 or was for 5 people. One person gets to be the DM, 4 people get to play, but it's a game like Baldur's Gate or like all the online top-down Diablo-style games, and it's got simulated campaigns. And so as somebody's making the map and spawning traps and beholders and whatnot, everybody's playing through it.
Yeah.
That would be super fun, and it's super easy to set up, apparently.
Yeah. But focusing again though, and we could plan stuff like that. Focusing again though, like it's been really good. I remember there was one person in our text RPG thing that was like, I didn't realize how much I enjoyed writing. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed these certain things, because before that point they had to write, they had to do things for school. But now they realized, I can read really well, I can write really well, and it brought out this whole part of themselves that didn't even know it was there. Mm-hmm. If all of this all of this started off of an incomplete book I had in high school. Like it Dungeons and Dragons has awakened things inside of people that I've played with, and it has helped me realize the complexities of life and a new way of ministering to people without directly ministering to them. Mm-hmm. Like they don't realize it, and if they're watching, they'll realize it now. I'm exposing myself.
You've been duped.
I've been duped. I am ministering to people through my Dungeons and Dragons game that I'm currently, the text-based thing that I'm running right now. Like, I'm low-key adding in Christian themes and stuff into it, like Lord of the Rings.
It's kind of like when you feed dogs some medicine and you wrap it in the cheese or the bologna.
Bologna, yeah.
It's like, here you go, friends. So what you're saying, getting back to the title of the stream, how D&D changed your life, you're saying that through an unlikely vehicle, you were able to look at something from a different perspective that really challenged you. Well, honestly, all the stuff that was going on in here manifested in your character and you didn't realize it.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, I'm seeing this from a third person. Because I think that's so special, because that's kind of what God does from us too when he talks about renewing our minds daily. It's like, you are not your circumstances. Let's step back and let's look at who you are apart from it, and let's start from there. You know, and that's what we do when we minister to people too. It's like, that's not who you are, man. But I think it's an unlikely vessel that could be used in a really cool way, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it helped me see parts of myself and who I am. It formed a new way of ministering to people. Mm-hmm. And it helped me see just how much it's really not about the thing so much as it is about the heart.
Yeah.
Because like Dungeons and Dragons can open the opportunity for you to express yourself in ways that are not okay. Let's just be straight honest. The things that I have done to my team is not okay in real life. But my heart is in the right place, and it's in a safe environment of which it's designed. All of it, God works all things together for His glory and good. And it's the same way in the role play. All things will work together for an ultimate message in the end. It's just an opportunity to creatively go through trials and stuff without actually experiencing them in real life.
Yeah.
Or being that cause of that problem in real life.
Yeah. You also played Second Life, didn't you?
I did.
Did the same thing happen there?
I did do role play there too. That's right. I forgot about that. That was actually my first experience with legit role playing. There was an asylum in the teen version of Second Life that I played in.
Oh, they had a teen version?
Mm-hmm. They had a teen. No longer. They should have kept it, but they got rid of it. And in the asylum, I met this girl, and I role played as like a ghost that was haunting the place. And she was trying to like rescue me and like save me and like save herself at the same time. And that was the first experience I had with role play. It was impactful. I forgot about that, but I did do that. Most of Second Life though was focused around me building things, but there was parts where we did do role play though with that.
Yeah, just thinking about it, and for you guys too, if you play, especially if you play RPGs or if you play, I don't know, games like League of Legends too, because it's weird. Like I always choose the same type of characters. I always do it. I never do the heavy hand-to-hand combat battle axes in Skyrim. Like I never did that. I never did the like. Well, I mean, I guess I strictly did mages. I like the sneaky utility type characters that kind of work in the background.
And I like playing wizards and sorcerers and things that people that can do things without having to touch them.
Yeah.
Like my favorite characters in D&D games, and you can attest to this, Mike, is the ones that mess with you mentally. Like I love that kind of stuff. The mesmerist, the spiritualist that you had. That was the first character that I played when you were hosting something. A Jonathan, I forget his last name, Mike, but he was like a spiritualist and a mesmerist, and he kept messing with people's brains. And then I have Saren, who has psionic abilities and can just make people see things in their head as if it was there and feel it as if it was happening, but not actually do it. Why do I like those? That's another thing, learning about myself. I guess I'm always about the mind already, so maybe that has to do with it. Like, if it's about the mind, that's just a representation of me.
Well, if you think about the Enneagram thing that we did a few days ago, I'm a 5. It called me a 5, an investigator. I'm very curious. I like to think about how things work, and like those things you see on YouTube where people set up this really elaborate thing where you like get a ball rolling and it knocks this thing over, which triggers this and I love stuff like that. So setting up a plan of attack, that's why I like Civilization and whatnot. All the strategy of it. So thinking, okay, I'm going to go into battle, and I made these poison arrows, but to get them to work, I need to figure out what their weakness is, and so I have to get the higher ground. How do I lure them out? Like in Skyrim, I played a conjurer archer. That was my first character. So I would summon these Atronachs, and they would engage the beast while I was getting my position from afar.
That's another class I like. Summoners is also fun.
Yeah.
Or controllers or whatever. I like all those things.
Yeah.
So I learn about myself. D&D is, again, it was a great source for me to learn about like my tendencies. So yeah, I thought I'd throw it out, but we're at 42 minutes. So
yeah. But what kind of classes do you guys enjoy? Like, how do you always classify? What do you normally go to? If you played Skyrim, did you always I always played a Breton or an elf? Or elven, not an elf.
Yeah. Also, what kind of races do you play? Because it also says something about you as well.
I always had my younger brother always played like the Argonian or the Nords. He was always the big buff.
I've always played the humans or human almost like things too. I never feel comfortable playing like freaking like if orc or something that looks very less human. I'll play elves, I'll play half elves, humans, stuff of that nature. Never have I played orcs or beast people or whatever. I generally do that. Although I've been slightly classing into that a little bit because of the roleplay, like I made mouse folk, so that's a thing.
Mouse folk?
Mouse folk.
Mouse folk.
Mouse folk.
Folk.
Yes, they 3 foot tall. We created a race called mouse folk on our roleplay. 3 feet tall, very short lifespan, very honest and blunt.
Yeah.
British
mouse folk.
I created them to be British.
That's really funny.
But Eden's saying something with a gun, always human.
Interesting. Oh, that's right. You freaking light me up in Minecraft with your Uzi or AK or whatever you had. That was insane.
How could you?
Yeah. But anyways.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun to play some. And if you guys would love to play some kind of RPG with us too on stream, that'd be really cool. Once again, we're thinking about doing something like that tomorrow or in the future. So if you have any ideas, let us know. I know. I think Eden was the one that said, Six said Neverwinter Nights has a DM mode. That'd be pretty cool. Neverwinter was a lot of fun back in the day.
Also, Scott's inviting you to some kind of the roleplay that he's been hosting for his birthday.
See, I read that comment earlier. I was like, Scott, you piece of crap. There's 2 people here. Come on, man. No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't thinking that. But man, I've actually never played D&D in real life.
Well, presented from yours truly, an invitation hath come.
Shucks. Well, if I don't see you before then, and if I don't make it, happy birthday, Scott.
You should come just so you can have the experience. I can loan you dice.
I want to get my own dice.
Fine.
Some like legit bone dice or something.
Ooh, that'd be something. Some ivory dice.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Oh, it'd be really fun if we could do like a thought raid in-person D&D session.
You know what? That actually I would definitely be down for, because we are utilizing the skills we have in front of a camera. We have a camera. We just come and host that. I would do that. Scott, if that interests you, just let me know. Maybe something in the future, an idea.
Yeah.
But otherwise...
So fun. Anyways... You ready to wrap up?
I think it'd be a good idea for the sake of those watching. I don't want to keep it too long for you.
Yeah.
Now let us know one thing I do want to know, besides what type of characters you play, in the comments, if you'd like for us to expand on this topic more, because we were kind of short about it, and I have plenty to talk about too, especially if I could focus not just on the stories, but on the reason, the point behind them. That'd be good. Let us know in the comments. That'd be great. And if you like this, make sure to like it and to subscribe to us and to hit the bell notification, because we're always coming up with great content that you would love to be there for. So, all that said...
We want to thank you guys for watching, taking Brandon's words. We broadcast every Monday, Friday, Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, soon to be 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And we'll see you soon.
Yep.
He says, I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.